Hey guys, welcome to my FTP tutorial breakdown and explanation. So in the agenda of this presentation, I'll be going through what is FTP, why we need it. I'll also go through an FTP Python implementation and I'll explain the code in that. I'll then go through a quick wireshark analysis analyzing the traffic captured from my FTP implementation. I'll then go into some pros and cons or advantages and disadvantages, and then I'll provide a brief summary of what we went over. What actually is FTP? FTP stands for File Transfer Protocol. It's a network layer protocol. It is used to transfer files from computer to computer, and it works by interacting with a server. A client interacts with a server. The client is typically known as the local host and the server the remote host, and it's typically used within the TCP IP suite. The process typically begins with a client logging on and initiating a connection between it and the FTP server. The client then authenticates themselves, and this is typically with a username and password. However, in the demonstration I'm going to show you, we used anonymous FTP access. Once the client is authenticated, it would interact with the server using text-based commands. Commands could consist of, say, retro, which is used to retrieve files, and I'll go over this in the demonstration. Then once the client is finished, it can close or quit the connection. That's just a quick rundown of FTP, how it's used, why it's used, and I'll just go through the Python implementation now. I'm going to quickly show you a FTP client Python implementation. I'll just run you through the demonstration first, and then I'll quickly go through and explain what the code does. So here it is running. All right, so that might have looked like I just went into the matrix and hacked into the mainframe with all this scrolling text and all these random L's, X's, M's, and R's, W's, and R's. But I'll just quickly explain the output. So what we do with ftp.dir, it just stands for directory, and it lists the contents of the current directory with the different and respective file permissions and sizes. So in this directory, we can see that if we went to path to Debian, it would take us to pub/debian/debian. That is important to note for later. If we went to Debian CD, it would take us to this directory, and Debian CD image to this, and then pub and welcome message. We decided to switch our directory to the Debian, so we clicked Debian, which sends us to pub/debian/debian. And the contents of Debian, by the way, we switched using cwd. After switching to Debian, we were able to look at all the contents, but just to show and demonstrate how you can go back a directory, I used cwd ... That just takes you back a singular directory, which, as you can see, took me back to just Debian because we went to Debian/Debian. So that took me back just to Debian, but I wanted to go back into Debian. And this README just, really caught my attention, really tickled my fancy. So I wanted to have a look at the contents in Debian, in Debian's README. So I used the with open to open the README file, and then I opened it as FB so I could reference it. I then used the retro binary, which just retrieves the file using binary. And I wanted to retrieve README. I used fp write as I opened with fp, and then I used file equals open with r for read, and I opened the file, and then I printed the opened file's contents, which you can see over here. This is the file contents, and later on I will show you what this looks like using a web version. But as you can see, we were able to retrieve a file, we were able to print a file, we were able to navigate a directory, all on an FTP server from our FTP client in Python. I'll just go to the web version now. So now I've navigated on my browser to the Debian, debian.org FTP server, and I clicked on Debian. This takes us to the index, which basically is the same as us saying ftp.dir. It lists the directory contents. Clicking on README, you can see this was the file that we were able to read the contents of in our Python client. All right, welcome back. Now I'll just go through the wireshark analysis that captured the traffic from that interaction.
All right, I'm going to provide a wireshark analysis of my FTP client server interaction. So I'm going to start the packet analysis, start capturing some packets. Now opening up my PyCharm, I'll run the client. Now once that is finished, I'll go over to Wireshark, stop capturing packets. Now analyzing FTP protocols, applying a filter, we can actually see that we are in the Oregon State University Resource Lab. We can see the unsecure nature of FTP here. We can see the username and the password that was used for our anonymous access. We then could see all the actions we took. We could see us changing directories, could see us going back directories, could see us listing, and finally you could see us retrieving with binary mode. We could see the file transfer and what file we actually wanted to retrieve. And yeah, we could see all of this, that none of it's been encrypted. We could see usernames, passwords. This really does go to show the unsecure nature of FTP and why this is such a downfall for the protocol. More on this will be discussed in the pros and cons of FTP.
All right, now we're done with that. Let's go into some of the advantages and disadvantages of FTP. FTP can transfer large amounts of data relatively easy. which makes it great for large-scale networks. This is good for scalability. It also allows transfers to be resumed. So if a transfer is interrupted, say you're in a large-scale network and there was an outage halfway through a file transfer, that would be paused and it can be resumed once the network regains connectivity. Multiple levels of access are easily created. We just demonstrated this by me connecting with an anonymous account. In that anonymous account, I actually wasn't able to upload files. I didn't demonstrate this because of the sake of brevity, but I was only able to retrieve files. However, there are disadvantages to using file transfer protocol. It's relatively insecure. As we demonstrated, we were able to go into the FTP server anonymously. We also were able to extract files, and there was no sort of encryption on these files. Passwords, usernames, stuff like that, not encrypted at all with FTP. It's also vulnerable to various attacks, such as session hijacking, spoofing, and brute forcing. Session hijacking would come as a result of the sessions not being encrypted, meaning they can be hijacked, and the hacker can essentially commandeer the session, hijacking it a bit like a pirate. Brute forcing refers to logging in or trying to log in with an array of different username and password combinations because a malicious actor would know that a username and password is required. It could just go through as many as it wanted until it found the right combination. And also, FTP servers are vulnerable to spoofing. If a malicious actor impersonated a FTP server or a client, it could gain unauthorized access doing this, and that's obviously not optimal. There's also a bit of a barrier to entry with FTP. It using a CLI, a command line interface, definitely restricts the user base for this product or protocol. Sorry. You would have to have a bit of an IT background to use it, but that's up to you how bad of a disadvantage that is. These are only a few, but for the sake of brevity and the scope of this explanation, I'll just keep it at that. So, just a quick summary. What actually is FTP? It stands for File Transfer Protocol. It's a network layer protocol used to transfer files from computer to computer, and it does this using a command line interface and connecting a client or a local host to a remote host or a server. As I said, we use it to transfer files between computers. We use it for network protocol activities. The advantages and disadvantages, well, some disadvantages would be its inherent lack of security, lack of encryption, anonymous access, and its vulnerability to a variety of attacks, such as brute force attacks. Its advantages would be potential scalability, its large file transfer capabilities. It's also quite scalable because it offers a form of transfer resumption. So if your transfer is interrupted, you can resume it. And it also provides good enterprise implementation with its multiple levels of access using a variety of users and user privileges. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to listen to this, and I wish you all the best. Thank you.